What's up, everybody? I'm Tim from Timber Ridge Gifts, and welcome to this week's edition of Wax Melt Wednesday. For the wax this week, we're going to be using Golden Brand's 464, which you can buy just about anywhere. Now, a lot of people will tell you that you cannot use 464 for wax melts, and for the most part, they're right. It's too soft and oily to the touch to use in wax tarts or molded wax melts, so you wouldn't be able to make something like this. You wouldn't be able to handle it. You wouldn't be able to package it. It would get squashed, melt in your hands, become a total mess. So unfortunately, we cannot use it for those. It's also very difficult to use in clamshell molds. It's protected from being handled, but because it is so soft, it's very difficult to actually break the wax melt apart and take them out piece by piece the way these clamshells were intended. And lastly, because soy wax is so susceptible to frosting, making such a small wax melt really limits the color we're able to use, because rather than the color, it's mostly going to be all frosting. Because the wax melt is so small, it's impossible to get it to cool evenly the way you would need to in order to help prevent that frosting. But despite all of its limitations, 464 is still a good wax to use for wax melts simply because of its ability to retain such a high fragrance load. Because we can pack so much fragrance into such a small area, you can make them extremely strong. Once they get in a wax melter, they can really fill up a room. So even though there are so many restrictions, there still is one way it can be done. So let's gather our supplies and I'll show you how we're going to do it. So first things first is our wax. Golden Brand's 464. Just about every candle supply company you look at is going to sell it. This particular batch I got from Rustic Essentials. Next is our fragrance oil. For these, we're going to be using Domestic Goddess by Just Scent. If you've never smelled this, it smells absolutely amazing. It smells like a really elegant perfume slash soap. It's got a little bit of the Dove hand soap smell to it, but it also has some really nice perfume notes as well. That's going to work out great in these wax melts. So we've got a pound of 464 melted down. We've got 2 ounces of fragrance oil. That's going to give us a 12% fragrance load. Like I said, because this is 464, we don't have to worry about any wicking or burning issues, so we can really pack the fragrance load in there. Now we're going to add a little bit of color. We can make these a light pink by adding just a couple of drops of red. And last but not least, we're going to need our container. Now the plastic clamshell molds would work good because they do protect the wax melt, but they come in different cavities. The soy wax isn't going to break apart very easily. It's just basically going to mush when you go to break it to get it out of the clamshell mold. So these aren't really going to work for us. But because that small plastic container concept does work for these, we can actually use a single-use container. To do that, we're just going to use these 2-ounce portion cups. You can get these at just about any grocery store or department store. I've seen them at Kroger, Target, Walmart, of course. You can buy them online on Amazon. I'll leave a couple links in the video description. These are going to work out great. These are the perfect size for most wax melters. And because they're single use, once we're ready to use the wax melt, we can just turn it upside down, press it out. We don't have to worry about breaking it apart into smaller portions. So the softness of the 464 really doesn't come into play. So we've got everything lined up, we've got everything mixed up. Now we just got to pour our wax melts. Because we're pouring into such small containers, we can do it with our standard pouring pitcher if we're careful. But a tool I like to use is this 3.5 cup funnel pitcher. It's got the long skinny funnel on the end, which will make precision pouring a lot easier. So we're just going to transfer from our pouring pitcher into my funnel pitcher. And now we're just going to pour our wax melts. The great thing about these portion cups, it's probably very hard to see in the video, but they do actually have a fill line at the very top. It gives us a good guide of when to stop pouring and fills them up to the perfect size every time. So those should dry a nice pink color. Just for fun, we're going to make the rest of them purple. We're going to go a bit darker color. Hopefully we'll be able to get a few of them to dry without frosting too bad. So we're going to let these dry just a bit. Once they're dried, I'll show you a few decorating options. We'll be able to throw these in the melter and see how they do. So our wax melts have completely dried. We've managed to get through with just a little bit of frosting, but overall they look great. We can just slap the lid on, put a label on it, package these are ready to go. But to be honest with you, they're pretty boring as they sit. We couldn't really get too fancy with the colors. Not much shape to them, it's just a plain cylindrical shape. But we still can work with these a little bit and decorate them to make them a little bit more attractive. To do that, we can use glitter or candy sprinkles. Because these aren't going near any open flames, we don't have to worry about that being a fire hazard. So we have options as far as what we can add to them to decorate them and make them that much more attractive. So to add our glitter or our sprinkles, it's really 2 different ways we can do it. We can do it while they're drying. Something as heavy as the sugar sprinkles is going to sink to the bottom if the wax is too liquid. So we would basically have to time it just right to where the wax on top was solid enough to hold it, but liquid enough for the sprinkles to embed in the wax. That can be done. That's going to take a lot of time because they're going to cool at different rates. So you're basically going to have to stand here the whole time and wait for each one. So we're not going to do that. We don't have time for that. So what we're going to do is wait for all of them to dry. Then we're just going to take a heat gun, gently warm the tops of them. We'll be able to add the sprinkles. It'll dry. It'll embed the sprinkles in place, and they won't go anywhere. A couple different things we can use. You can use the standard hardware store heat gun. You want to be really careful with this. You want to use it on its lowest setting because this produces a lot of heat at such a great volume. With a very thin, flexible plastic, you can easily melt the container that these are in. If you did that, the lid wouldn't fit on it right, and it would be a waste. So instead, we're going to use a Craft heat gun. These work just as well. Not quite as much heat and not as much air volume. We still have to be careful, but there's not as much risk of us damaging our containers. So we're just going to melt the tops. Once that's melted, we're just going to add our sprinkles. Once that dries, those will be locked in place and it'll be ready to go. Let's go ahead and finish the rest of them. And in just a few minutes, these will be completely dried. They'll be ready to pop out of our containers and throw in our wax melters. So as they sit now, the cold throw, I would rate about an 8 out of 10. There is a lot of fragrance in that 12% packed into such a tiny package. So these are going to be extremely strong. But these are ready to go. Let's pop them in other containers, get them in the melter, and see how they melt. So we're completely melted down. I had 3 of those in there, which is about 6 ounces, which is a lot of wax melt. I actually put it in one of the bigger rooms in my house. This was in the living room, which has vaulted ceilings. It's probably about maybe a 20 by 25 foot room. Good sized room with the high ceiling, and still these will just blow you out of there. The Hot Scent Throw is definitely a 10 out of 10. The Domestic Goddess by Just Scents smells amazing, and those were some really great wax melts. So as you guys can see, even though there are a lot of limitations, you still can make really good wax melts out of Golden Brands 464 with no special treatment, no additives, just the wax, fragrance oil, and dye, and the proper container to contain it all. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's edition of Wax Melt Wednesday. Hope to see you next week. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, check out all my playlists for some more candle making tips and tricks. Make sure to follow all the links in the video description, including the awesome new Facebook group that I've started. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.